Hi, everybody. It's Bob O's. This is Friday. It's January 23rd. This is our weekly community gathering. Weekly. It's truly weekly. This has been since April 17th, 2020. We've done this every Friday, except for maybe three. So it's actually our 297th 96th, 97th consecutive community gathering. Normally, what we do is we talk about different aspects of theater, and I have guests from different areas of theater and the arts, not just theater, sometimes music world, and sometimes the film world, and other worlds. But today we're doing a specific and very important community gathering from TRU's point of view, because basically this is to introduce you to um, one of our main programs, one of our uh, most important, I dare say, programs. Though I'd like to think that everything we do is important to some degree. But this is really an opportunity for you to learn about our producing program as taught by Jane Dubin and Blair Russell, who are going to be with me today. Uh, I want you to also know that we're a small not-for-profit arts organization in New York. We are for 33 or 34 years, we've been basically helping people, well, create a community for one thing, but also learn and how to navigate the business of theater. We have artists as well as producers. We have a mission, a sub-mission of actually nurturing and developing producers. But producers also includes artists who eventually wind up self-producing. So that's one of the things we're going to be talking about today is the importance of self-producing and how you're not the only one who does it. Don't worry. It happens all the time. Artists wind up producing themselves. So I'm going to bring in my two speakers today. Um, we have two aspects of our producer development and mentorship programs. One is called the Foundations class, and this is the fellow who actually teaches it. This is Blair Russell.
Hello.
And Blair, do you and Jane want to do a duet, or do you want to start off and talk about your side, and then we'll bring in Jane's side? How do you want to do it?
We normally talk together and sort of talk about the overall program, and then I'll do a little bit on
Yeah,
foundations. Jane does a little bit on masterclass.
So
Okay.
there you go.
that's fine. Yeah, you could start, Blair.
Wonderful. My name is Blair Russell. I am in my regular life a producer. I produce new works generally, but I've worked off-Broadway with wonderful Jane Dubin. I've been a co-producer on Broadway shows. I've worked in the West End, the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. I'm developing a new immersive studio and venue out in Denver, Colorado right now. So I've done a variety of different things. Before I was a producer, I was a stage manager, worked in a number of regional theaters, and yeah, that my excitement about kind of how shows are made led me to want to know, even more and kind of get a bigger picture on how shows are made, and so that's how I ended up producing. I've been producing full time for 6 years. I'm very excited because I am one of the instructors for the PDMP program in the Foundations course. The most important thing here, I think, is that, Jane and I act as, yes, teachers and instructors, and we share our information, but really, we're here to help anyone who is interested in understanding more about producing and producers, interested in potentially self-producing their own work, but really anybody who wants to know more about this business and kind of see how they can get from where they are to hopefully achieving whatever their goals are. Jane, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself?
Gee, twist my arm. Talk about myself? Nah. Um, Hi, I'm Jane Dubin. I am the masterclass producer, and I invite anybody who's out there to actually turn on their cameras because I have it on multi-speaker view, so I can see you all, and I like to see people. Um, no, no pressure, but I teach the masterclass. I've taught it for quite a while. I am a commercial producer and also a nonprofit person. I sit on the board of Houses on the Moon Theater Company. I'm co-chair of that board. Um, I have done nine co-productions on co-producing gigs on Broadway. American in Paris, Peter and the Starcatcher, Is This a Room, Dana H, bunch of others. And I have done Off-Broadway with Blair. We did Still at this time last year. And I'm leading a musical called The Village of Vale. And I believe that the best partnerships between producers and playwrights happen when playwrights understand the process. And in this environment where things are costing more and more, it has become incumbent upon playwrights to take a more active role in the early stages of development. So knowing what that means is also helpful for playwrights. So I like having a mix of producers who are interested primarily in producing other people's work and playwrights who are primarily interested in self-producing and maybe will eventually be interested in producing other people's work, but a mixture of things. And I think the best outcome for me after class is that, one, everybody has a better understanding of the process, but two, also in the seminar setup of masterclass, that there's a community that develops and continues on in the relationships. And I think that has generally been the case. I see a few former students here, which makes me happy. So yeah, that's it. And Blair, you want to start, like, describe the foundations, and then I can just add on, make it easier.
So, in foundations, how it's typically structured is across 10 classes. I will give you a very foundational, very entry-level understanding of what a producer does. Jane will talk a little bit about the difference between our classes, but really this is for anybody who maybe you've produced before in a very small way. Maybe you've absolutely never produced before. Maybe you still don't even know what a producer does. That's what this class is for. I will go over a variety of categories, starting with everything from strategic pathways for developing our work, budgets, the different jobs and job titles that producers have to work with. Particularly, we'll do deep dives into general management. We'll talk about legal contracts and agreements that producers need to know. We will talk about fundraising, sort of really important key element. And we'll talk about marketing and advertising and press. And I'll kind of give you a full overview on a week-to-week basis of all of the things that at least I believe are foundational for a producer. The class culminates in a group project. I know everybody loves a group project, but actually, the reason it's a group project is it means everybody could do a little less work. But the group project is a team of normally about 3 or 4 people putting together a 15-minute pitch for a project which is not their own. And the purpose of this group project is to allow, after you've had this full semester of learning the different topics that you need to understand and different categories, the different information, to be able to put that to sort of practical use. And pitch a project utilizing all of that information in a way that's sort of low pressure because it's not your own project. It's not something you have to worry about. We do have guests in the course, typically someone related to the topic at hand. So I might bring in a general manager. I might bring somebody from the marketing world. Sometimes I let one of many lawyers teach the the legal class if I'm not feeling up to it. And we also have some wonderful guest producers who come in at the end of the semester. And the guest producers are actually the quote unquote judges for our non-graded, non-competitive final projects. But they share a project that they're working on or they're interested in developing with you. And that becomes the basis for the final project. So they get to judge your pitch of their project back to them. Otherwise, it's typically Tuesday nights. We try to keep it fairly consistent, barring any holidays. And the entire every Tuesday, it's about 2 hours. The first 30 minutes, I sort of use as like the happy half hour, where we do some general talking about topics. Maybe people have questions about specific projects that they're looking on or projects that they're working on or that they're tracking. We also talk about current events within the theater so that you kind of get up to speed on how producers look at things and how we think about things. And it really helps people sort of understand the full scope of this thing that we do. So that is the sort of baseline of foundations.
Great. And so then on to masterclass. Just like a college curriculum, the foundations is kind of the prerequisite or equivalent of masterclass. Equivalent being producing experience, could be in a film or theater. It's just some indication that you've done this before. And it's more of a seminar participatory type of class. We do, if you look at the syllabus that's on the website, the truonline.org website, you'll see that the topics are similar. It's just how where we talk about them and how we talk about them, and the fact that the class is geared to people who have a project that they are currently leading, whether that's you as writer shepherding your own work, or you as producer lead on another project. I've had a couple of students who actually met other playwrights in the masterclass, producers in the foundations class, who use that project as their project for masterclass. And the main difference is you will be focusing on your own work, and there are multiple presentations. One is the end of year, which is when you present your project, again, based on what you've learned, and to a group of guests. Blair has been a guest, Bob has been a guest, and other producers and or general manager types. And one is a project where you are paired with someone and present their work as if you were the lead producer and they present your work. That gives you an opportunity, whether you're a producer or a writer, to put on the producer hat and see what it is about another project that you want to put forward, because that's kind of what producers do, is try to attract other people to the project that they're leading. And it also gives you a perspective from an outside cold view of your work, that you might actually learn something about your project. I also have a hot topic. So if you have something that's of interest to you in the theater world, 5 minutes of raising the subject, that's sort of the beginning of class, to talk about something current going on, and you kind of lead the discussion. I meet on Monday nights. We have up to 9 classes. I usually throw in a bonus class there somewhere. It just depends on how many people are in there and what we need to cover. And I will be starting the last week of February, and probably going most of the time every week, with a few every other week periods of time. Again, that will depend on everybody's schedules. That's the basic outline. And I would say, just as an overview, if you're looking for information, you can't go wrong in either class. As like I said, we do cover a lot of the same material. Sometimes we even have the same guests. I also bring in, I definitely bring in a lawyer. I am not a lawyer. I don't play one on television. And so I don't want to give anybody false information. They'll come back and blame me for. So I do bring in a lawyer. We have general managers. We have a little bit different take on talking about budgets. I don't claim to know your budget. I do discussions about budget where I'm concerned have to do with trade-offs and how you can plan for making a budget. Yeah, so we cover a lot of the same ground, just with a smaller number of people and focused on your projects.
I just want to remind the room that you're free to put questions into the chat or raise a hand if you have any questions or comments about the program at all. I want to echo what Jane had said earlier, which is basically, I mean, I learned this over overseeing this program, not running it, for the past 15, 20 years, whatever it is. Producers really are happier to work with people actually who understand how things work. And it's also important for you as writers and artists, those of you who are in the room. I can't tell you how many times over the past 30 years I've heard people talk about how they were screwed by a producer. And the truth of the matter is, nobody was ever screwed by a producer. They simply didn't read their contract or they didn't understand their contract. So maybe somebody once was.
Yeah. Nobody was screwed by a producer in this room.
That's
Yes.
true. That's
If they
true.
were screwed by a producer, that producer probably went to jail.
But honestly, even
Yeah.
producers who are a little there are people that are shady in the business. There are. But if you actually understand what they're talking about, you have a defense against it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think if one of the things that I've observed over the years when people talk about theater, it's this wonderful, magical place. It's a family. We're all in this together. And I will respond to that by saying, I'm not going to ask anybody for a show of hands, but how many of you have family members that you're not in agreement with or you're not talking to? And so if you think of that
Especially
perspective,
today.
yeah, especially in this environment, um, that theater is a business. And while there are a lot of really wonderful people in theater, it is a business of relationships. There's also a lot of legal stuff. There are contracts, there's money at stake. And so if this were any other business, you would never enter into agreements without knowing what they were. You would do all of your due diligence. When you were meeting someone, you'd Google them or chat GPT, whatever, find out their backgrounds and know who you're getting into a relationship with. And you have to think about that with theater as well. So again, whether you're on the writer side and have no interest in producing yourself, but want to understand the process, if you're a writer who's self-producing or you're a producer, you really have to understand what the whole picture is. You can never know all of the details. It's too much and it changes a lot, but you do know, your job as a producer is to know what decisions need to be made and how you judge those, how you make those decisions. And some of it is relying on other people for information. But if you don't know what the information is that you need, that's when you may feel like you got screwed, but it's really just, that's the way things are done. You got to know how things are done.
I also want to say to those of you in the room who may actually have had experience producing, um, you may know a lot of this. The thing that's useful about the program is that it's put into digestible bites. It's organized. The information is organized. So a lot of the stuff that you intuitively may know or actually do know, it becomes very supportive and it amplifies your knowledge when you hear it explained in a system. It's systematic. Each week Blair and Jane will cover one aspect of producing. And I think there's great value in that. It's also helpful when you think you know something to actually find out that you really do know it. So that's another reason why the classes these classes are very, very popular. I'll just go right on record as saying that. And I've heard very little from people who haven't been like changed by actually taking these classes.
I feel a song coming on.
Oh, is this the song?
For the better. Wicked,
Yeah, I know. Change something for good. What is it? It's just for good, right?
Change for good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the master class just ended, and one of the students said to me, "What I got most out of this class was confidence," and that's this was a writer who had done some readings, but he's like, "What am I waiting for? I'm just going to go ahead and do a production." And I myself experienced this with a different program a while back in the aughts, when I took a producing seminar. I was very new to the business, and I took this class with all Broadway people teaching it, and I didn't know if I knew more or less than everyone else, but I figured it was less. And what I realized was that the class was reinforcing my own instincts, and that, okay, and it gave me the encouragement to move forward. and also a group of people that were doing the same thing I was doing, which made it easier because some of the Broadway people that I was meeting didn't know how to deal on my level. So, for example, I asked my mentor, who had nominated me for that program, for a press agent recommendation, and I was doing a showcase downtown, 16 performances, and he said, I don't know. I only deal with this one press agent firm, and they only do Broadway. I wouldn't even know where to point you, but I could ask the people that I had been in class with, who are you using, and get recommendations and things like that. So it's just a reinforcement of people who are going through the same things that you're going through, and also an introduction to a universe of, potential partners, and an introduction to some Broadway and off-Broadway producers and general managers and resources that you might not otherwise be aware of. We've been talking. Does anybody have questions?
Oops, I made a mistake just now. Sorry.
You untagged us.
Yeah. There we go.
Don't be shy. If anybody has any questions, you can.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do.
put 'em in-
I was going to come on and encourage the room to ask questions. I would say to everybody in the room, so if you want a little bit of a framework for questions, what would be the first thing you would want to learn in a class like this? What is it that you feel like that you need to know on your list of priorities? So we could talk a little bit about some of these topics if anybody raises a hand. Nobody's raising a hand. Okay. Let's see.
Well, how if I can ask a question? How many people in this room are writers? Maybe I should ask how many people are not writers.
Well, you can be a writer and a producer.
And a producer, right? How many people would self-identify as a producer?
I guess all one hand. Two hands?
Jesse and Lucinda, Jeff,
Or
Sarah.
As a self-producer?
No, as a producer. Okay,
as a producer.
We talk about producing oneself, but also you can be a self-producer, but you can also be interested in producing someone else's work.
Yeah.
Would you ever consider producing someone else's work? That's the question.
Yeah, okay. So there's some good stuff. Good, a good mix of people here. Jeff has his hand up. Is that for a question?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. First off, as a producer, how much responsibility would you shoulder for the success or lack of success of the production, judging if you judge success by number of tickets sold? And then the second question is, as producer, do you maintain control of a veto over script, casting, all those aspects?
I mean, as a producer, once you are going into a production, you are pretty much entirely responsible for the success or failure of the show. You might, when you're alone over a glass of something, blame somebody else, but you hired that person. You decided to partner with that person. You decided to collaborate with that person. So the success or failure of a show is entirely your responsibility as a producer. Whether, and Jane, you might have a different answer to this question too. Typically, yes, you don't have veto. It's a collaboration, right? Our job is to work with our team members, be it writer, director, anybody involved in the process, to collaborate on creating the best project. That means we typically all have voice share in a vote on who's going to be in the lead role and how these things are going to be done. That being said, I think producers who writers tend to work with a little bit better, ones who know when to step in and when to step back and let creators make decisions. But ultimately you should be advocating for some decision-making power.
Yeah, I agree with most of what Blair said. I would argue that the number of tickets sold isn't necessarily how I would define success. I think there are a lot of definitions of success, that there's financial definitions, there's creative definitions, and getting a show on its feet is a measure of success. But ultimately, like any organization, whoever's leading it, the buck stops there. So if you have a successful production, it's up, it's running, it's run its course. There are a lot of reasons that people go see shows, and there are a lot of reasons they don't. Some of which are out of your control. So to me, putting up a quality show is a success, and I think that's what a producer has control over. And the second part of the question was vetoing. I think there's different points of time where you have more or less veto power. If you have to exercise a veto, it's never a good sign.
Right.
But ultimately, before you go into production, the producer's ultimate veto power is, you know what, this is going to work, I'm going to walk away. And so if there's no ability to compromise between the creative team and the producer, it's going to be a nightmare. And that's why it's important to have a relationship and to talk things through and to understand the contracts that you're signing when you're a creative. Ultimately, the writer has veto power over their words, casting, director, and all of that. Typically, the producer will be hiring all of those people. So if you don't want, like, if a writer says, I want this designer, and the designer is asking for $10,000 for a $2,000 job, the producer is going to say, well, we offered them, this is what we offered, and they don't want it. We're not going to hire them. We're not going to hire them for that man. So there's a range of how you can control things. Ultimately, the producer has power over the budget. And that's one way to exercise control. But hopefully you can work these things out ahead of time when you're talking about whether you want to work together. There's a great question in the chat, and then George, we'll get to you. It says, do you have to be, I love, Pam, I love the way you put this. The producers have to be rich asking for a friend. They don't have to be rich. A lot of producers will bundle money from investors. You have to have access to capital. You have to be able to raise the money. If you have it, it's just a backstop against if you can't raise it. And it's difficult if you have a producing team and nobody's got money and you can't raise it, then you have to shut down.
So there are some producers who actually don't put any money into their shows, but there is a feeling that in most cases, oh, you're going to say the same thing.
Well, I was going to say, even if the producers don't put money in their shows, that doesn't mean they're not rich. You have to. So if we are talking about commercial producing, off-Broadway, Broadway, national tour level, if you wanted to do that as a job, it's pretty much a full-time job, and it's a full-time job that does not pay. So you have to have some level of financial comfort in order to be doing that full-time job that does not pay. To produce something in general, absolutely not. You do not have to be rich. If you wanted to do something in your community, if you wanted to go and do something off Broadway, like, you can raise money. But yes, most people who would consider themselves professional full-time producers in New York probably worked in some other industry and have some money from that, have another job that they do, have the ability to say, hey, here's a chunk of money to help me sort of jumpstart a project. But yeah, there's the old adage that, like, you don't put your own money in the show, but that's because they have a lot. That's because they have money to not put it in the show.
But the other side of that I just want to mention is that a lot of producers feel that without having some skin in the game, it's harder for them to convince.
Right.
In some cases, it's harder for them to convince their investors to move it. Or let's put it the other way. There are investors who would be more comfortable putting money in it, knowing that you put some money into it as well.
Right. I think that's more a co-producer issue because having been a lead producer, whether I put money in or not, thus I got skin in the game. and it's like literally my skin and the hair falling out and the sleep you're losing because it's a full-time job. So I don't think too many people say of a lead producer, well, how much money do you have in there? Because they're ultimately responsible for backstopping the entire budget if they can't raise it. George was next.
Yeah, I just want to also say that there's another question from Pam that we'll come back to.
Okay. So I was in a meeting yesterday and with a producer, and he talked about the fact that there are a number of GMs who are also producers. That was kind of news to me. And I was curious as to what you thought about that. Is that actually kind of a good, mix? In other words, if I'm looking to hire a GM, if they're also a producer, is that going to create any kind of conflict?
A GM typically, well, the skills that a GM has, if you were an amazing producer, if you want to be the best producer ever, you would also have all of those skills.
Mm-hmm.
Most producers do not. Most GMs, as like a headline, hey, do I have all of the necessary skills to be a producer? Yes, they could. They absolutely could produce a show. That doesn't mean they would be a good producer because it doesn't account for taste, understanding of the market,
Right.
ability to work with artists, any of those things. But like the baseline skills to be a producer, all GMs could do that if they could also raise money. It doesn't,
Which is not a given. GMs
right.
will
Right.
not be raising money for you.
So
Right.
from a skill set standpoint, all GMs could be producers, but like taste, money raising, all of those things,
Mhm.
no, they cannot necessarily.
Mhm.
There are people who GM as a job, a way to make money in addition to being producers. That's fine. I think having a GM and a producer separate is always helpful because it means that those people have to actually like challenge their beliefs and decisions.
Mhm.
So anyway.
Yeah, I would say that last part to me is what's most relevant. If you go back to the old stereo model where you got the component system or you got individual components, like you got the one that was all one piece or you got the components. And typically when you got components, you got a better system. It was perhaps more expensive. I think if you have a GM that is also the producer on a show, you may be in a position, depending on who is whose boss, where someone won't challenge the producer. Or if Blair and I were co-leads on a show and Blair has the GM also, then I'm going to feel like I'm the third wheel, right? Because they're going to talk about stuff and maybe Blair's going to say to them, you better do it this way or I'm going to fire you. So I'd rather have a completely different opinion. That's just me. But there are producers that have the whole vertical thing going where they have a press agent, they have a marketing firm, they have a GM arm, and they'll just put the whole package together, when they're leading a show, because
Right.
at least that way they know they're making money. The other problem with that model, George, is there may be some conflict within themselves where they will continue to run a show that maybe isn't profitable because they're making money anyway. So
Right.
maybe they're not, that's
Right.
the more nefarious view of things. But
Yeah.
ultimately, you just have to pick the best people for the job.
Yeah. My second question is for you, Jane. And I don't want to go into like depth here because it's just, everybody doesn't need to know. I don't want to take up all this time, but I did want to talk with you about the class that you run and specifically in terms of how it relates to my background as a producer. And so I wanted to know if there was a way to get a hold of you, to email you or something, set up a time where we could talk about that.
Well, George, what I will say, and I'll say this to everyone, if you're interested in the class, fill out an application, and I meet with every applicant before I let them in the class because there typically tends to be more people than applicants. So if you put your email in the chat or send me your email, I will send you, Bob or I will send you the application. You fill it out, then I'll look at your background, and there's a lot of questions about who you are. That goes for anyone. Fill out the application, and then Blair and I talk about the applicants, and Some people that apply for foundations really, really like, maybe you should take master class. And some people apply for master class, and we say, like, maybe you should take foundations and, you know, just firm up your foundational knowledge. So if we do it that way,
great.
you know, that yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
So I think that we should go to Hillary. She's had her poor Simpson hand a long time, and then we'll come back to Pam's second question, and then we'll get to Michael.
Okay, first quick question. Do producers give themselves a salary?
No, not really.
That goes with an alas, no.
Alas, I mean, look, there's all kinds of structures. I mean, if you're doing a commercial play, there's usually a producer fee, just like there's a GM, like upfront, producer fee, general management fee, director fee, and all that. And the producers will get a royalty, and they'll get an office charge. Many times those are all waived because they're trying to, you know, make it. So that's the first thing that goes, is the producer getting paid. But up until the point where you're actually selling tickets to something, the producers are spending money. They're not making money.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Second one, with the foundations class, are these classes in person? And what happens if one has to miss a class? Because I'm going to be out of the country a few times.
They are virtual, and I'm going to be out of the country more than you.
You want to bet? You want to bet?
So all the classes.
I'll bet on Blair. He doesn't even live here, so
I will.
He's already out of the country.
Okay.
They are recorded, and all the recordings are available if you. It's obviously not recommended because once you're there, you can be in conversation, you can ask the questions you need, but all the recordings are available after class if you need to go back and catch up or want to watch it again. So it's easy to access from wherever you are, and it's available for you if for whatever reason you do have to miss a singular class.
I have a different answer because I do not record the masterclass. There's a lot of information that's people are speaking about their own projects that they don't want on recordings. And I find with some of the things that I say and our guests say that they won't say it if it's recorded.
Makes sense. What is the schedule for that foundations course? Because I need the foundations.
That's a great question. I'm always unprepared for that question when I come to these intro meetings. Let's ask another question. I'll think about it and then I'll answer it. I'll look at a calendar.
Well, it's Tuesday nights. That's that. You know that.
Tuesday nights.
Tuesday nights.
Tuesday
Okay,
evenings,
and I know that if I miss, I can watch it because I'm gonna have to leave soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and again, that just on the TRU website, truonline.org, there is the application under programs. There is the application for foundations class. So you can go there. There's also descriptions of the syllabus. The dates are not there yet. And if you're applying for foundations, you can get that application and send it in. And then, you're all set. If you're interested in masterclass, you can email Bob or me. I'll put my email in the chat and we'll send you an application. And then I will meet with each person. We meet Monday nights starting at the end of February, 5:30 to 8. It's 2.5 hours.
I just want to make sure people know this, that we raised the fee slightly starting in the spring, just so any of you who've looked to apply in like last year, and it's going to be a little bit more. It's not much, like it's like $10 more or something like that.
And it would be higher if it was up to me, but
yeah, I know. I'm the one
Bob,
I'm the one who's fighting to keep the fee down.
He's trying to make it as accessible as possible for everybody.
That's my mission.
I've looked at the calendar. And it will be 10 weeks from February 24th until April 28th on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
February 24th is going to be the start date. Okay. That's good for me to know too.
Probably.
So, yeah. Let's see. What was the other question that was? It made
and
me
I'll be
laugh,
starting
actually.
I'll be starting the 23rd, and about the same time frame, but I'm not every week for that time frame.
Oh, this
and
is this is
I'm just going to just answer a couple of these questions quickly, Bob. The question is, will we both be teaching next fall and spring? I mean, that would be the plan, but
God willing, and the creek don't rise.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Question, raising money is the hardest part. What's the difference between lead, co, and executive? Lead is the boss. They are the managing member or general partner of the company that is running the show. A co-producer has an agreement with the company to raise money for certain considerations. The co-producers have no authority, but they have investors or themselves. You can write a check and be a co-producer, and you are part of the team. Think of it like an advisory board to the company. An executive producer is generally a hired position, particularly if your lead producers are not experienced or maybe out of New York, to advise the producers from a producer standpoint, not as a general manager. So they are hired. They're not responsible, although they may help raise money, but that's not their job.
Barbara, is that clear?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
As far as
the Pam question that I liked was, in third grade speech, what will I be equipped to do at the end of the in other words, if you, in very simple terms, what would she be able to do with the information she gets in your classes?
And which class?
Well, I
think if it's third grade speech, it's probably going to be foundations.
Foundations.
If you walk out of foundations, you should be able to produce a show at any level. That being said, I don't think that you would have necessarily the skills, context to go off and produce a Broadway show, because, it takes a lot. But even I can't go off and produce a Broadway show right now. But you would have the knowledge to say, okay, I want to produce a show in a year. What's the first thing that I need to do? And go step by step and have your show up in a year. I think if you did foundations and then continued on to Jane's masterclass as you were doing that, you would get a much deeper understanding, much more thorough advice, and really kind of do the advanced level of producing. So if you walked out of foundations, you'd be able to produce the third grade pageant. And if you walked out of masterclass, maybe you'll be able to produce your college show. I don't know.
Yeah, I would add to that I think hopefully you walk out of there with a knowledge base that allows you to talk to people in the industry as a peer. Mm-hmm. And maybe you're not the level of David Stone, who's the Wicked producer and many other things, but if you met him, you would understand what he does and how to talk to him.
So I'm not sure if everybody knows this, but I think we must have said it. The classes are virtual. We don't do any of it live these days. I mean, we used to once upon a time, but it's easier because there's a lot of people from outside of New York who want to take this class, and so virtual is really the way that we go with it. Michael DeGaetano, you must be exhausted. Your hand has been up for half an hour.
Ooh, man. Yeah, a couple of questions. One point of reference: the person who will probably be my GM for my Miss Humanity reading is also a Broadway producer. He's got a component of his company that does GM separately. He might not produce the show, but he is going to GM when I do the agreement. My big question is, I've heard all different numbers of what a GM should cost for doing an equity reading or something. What is there a range?
I think you have to ask GMs that. I don't think this is the place for us to tell you.
I just didn't know. I mean, this is my first time dealing with that kind of a thing. So
yeah. Well, it depends on if it's a musical or a play, if you're in a studio or a theater, how many people are in the cast. It's.
Michael, you've done Jane's class? Done Jane's class?
No.
I did the foundations with David Elliott.
Okay.
I haven't done Jane's yet.
I think, Michael, my best advice to you is to look up. You can find on Off-Broadway Alliance a list of GMs. You, I'm sure, can come up with names on your own. Yeah. And I would call them and this is what you're doing. What would be your fee? And get 5 different GMs to give you an estimate. And if the one that you're wanting to use is out of line, come back to them and say, you're out of line.
Michael, this also might be useful
Yeah.
for you. What level are you producing at this point?
For reading. He's saying a reading.
It's just a reading. So
No, we're going for industry reading. We're not going to do
Okay.
a workshop.
So the negotiating chip for a reading is that you have a letter of agreement that they will go on to GM the show if it goes to the next level of production.
Mhm.
I know people who have done that.
Okay.
I can give you privately some ideas of what you might expect to pay for a reading.
That would be good. Yeah, because Cody gave me some names too. So the more I get, the better.
Yeah,
I know what people charge.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll email back and forth.
I have a different opinion, but I'm going to keep it to myself.
oh no, talk about it.
Tell us.
Go.
Producing a 29-hour reading is not that hard.
Mhm.
And I don't know when your reading is. I don't know if you'd be get in the class. I can't name any of those things, but you could walk out of here if you've done foundations and masterclass and do that yourself.
Absolutely.
And you could put that money towards
Absolutely.
something
So,
else.
let me also say about that, because this is actually an interesting topic to me. The reason why you want to hire a general manager for a reading is because you have to attach someone that is a known quantity to your reading if you want to get anybody to attend it.
Right.
So having a GM who's well known attached to it opens a few doors. We'll get a few more people to come and see it. Also, if you have the agreement, if there's an understanding with the GM knows more people than you do probably, and probably can invite people. Those are the reasons why you want to pay a GM.
But
They don't always.
if you are
Okay.
going to do it for that reason, then you should have it as part of your agreement, because GMs will say to you, that's not what we do. It's not our job.
Right.
They're for hire. They're not invested in the quality of the show. They're vested in making money to produce the reading. So if they're going to invite people, then you should say these specifics about that they're going to send out an email to their list, and this is what the email is going to say, and things like that.
Okay.
And remember, even if
Don't assume anything.
No.
Yeah.
He's also a really close friend, so it's kind of even weirder. It's like
That particularly if he's a close friend, put everything in writing.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what you do to avoid any kind of like friendship issues.
Yeah.
Even if they agree to send out an invite, that doesn't necessarily mean anybody they send an invite out to is going to come.
That's true. That's
We'll
true.
be aware. That doesn't mean they're going to push super hard to get, like this is why the things need to be in writing.
Based on my experience, it's one of the things that some of them do sell themselves on. Why do I need you? Why do I need you? Well, you need me because I can do this, and that's one of the things that they say they can do.
Right. Okay. Thanks. I've taken up enough of your time. I'll hear from Bob about the cost stuff you were going to tell me.
Yeah. And by the way, don't give up the right of first refusal if you don't have to, because that's locking you in. And if you don't like what they're doing and you go on to something, you have to buy them out.
Right.
So make them earn it.
Okay, you got it. Thanks.
Simone
has her hand up.
Hi, thank you. I'm not sure who can answer this question, but so I'm imagining myself having been one of the multimillionaire now producers of Hamilton, made investors millionaires. When can I walk away? Like, does the producer have to stay throughout the entire, like, what is it now, 10 years? Can they do something else? Just very curious, like, because, there's so much dedication that I'm hearing, and I'm like, okay, 10 years, like, is there anything else that I really need to be doing besides maybe the tours or things of that nature, which can be other producers? I'm just trying to figure out, like, if we're looking at something like that, how long does the producer have to hang in there?
I'll answer the well, it's not even an answer to your question. This is just a bit of fact checking, which is both the producers and all of the investors involved in Hamilton were already millionaires. They just have more millions now. But yeah, the way that it works is when you get a show set up as a producer, once you've done all of that development work and you've gotten it open on Broadway, there is a point where you no longer are doing the day-to-day. In reality, producers rarely doing the day-to-day. Like your job is very much sort of overseeing the process, putting teams together. But not only will you, if you're doing a show of that scale, have a producing office where you have your producing assistants and your associates who are making sure that you're seeing the weekly grosses every week, and if there's any major issues that they're communicating to you. But you'll have a general manager who's working on the show and taking their fee every week. You'll have a company manager who's on the ground, stage management. So once a show is open, you really have the opportunity to move on to your next project. In fact, that's sort of how Prince's famous advice was like, have something ready to go the day after opening night. And producers are often working on multiple projects at the same time. So you may have one in early development where you're doing a reading, and then you have another one that's going actively into tech and production. So you don't ever walk away because you want the money to continue to come to you, but you don't actively work on it.
Yeah, and Simone, there are is it Simone or Simone Monet?
Simone Monet.
Okay, sorry, Simone Monet. There are contractual
obligations.
There are specifications in the operating agreements of the companies that are set up that account for the fact that if you're a lead producer and you want to walk away, there's a method for that. Now, if you were a lead producer of Hamilton, I'm not sure why you'd want to walk away, because it's just like sending you money every day, week, month, whatever. But that's accounted for. If you're a managing member or a general partner of a company, you can walk away, and the other partners take over your from that point forward. But there are also provisions. That's what I was looking for. There are provisions in that agreement as well that state that this doesn't preclude you from doing anything else. Like you can compete against yourself, and you can do whatever you want. So if you're working on one of these long-term projects, it doesn't stop you from doing anything else.
Pam, I want to answer Pam's question, and then you guys can answer it. But if producers are volunteers, what motivates the non-writer, non-Broadway? I don't know what that means, but what motivates producers to produce? I can say it in one word: passion. Producers produce because they love the work. They want to get it up there. It's that simple. It's not that simple. I mean, there are other things too, but at heart, and literally at heart, that's why producers produce. They love theater. They love your work.
Yeah, I think beyond the obviously. Well, I won't say obviously. For me, I need to really feel strongly about both you and the play, because this is not something that's going to, if producing a reading is one thing, because that's like a one-off, but if I'm going to get involved in a project, it's going to be a long-term relationship. So I really have to want to be working with you, supporting you in some way, and love the play. And, we all hope that whatever we're doing turns into Hamilton or Wicked or something like that. But that can't be why you do it, because there's only one Wicked and only one Hamilton and only one Phantom. And that chances are the project we're doing isn't going to be that. But it's always a hope.
I just want everybody to also know that even when a show doesn't make millions and millions of dollars, the people involved in it are very often proud of what they've done. And that includes the investors who have lost their money. You hear it all the time. They say, "I'm so glad I did this. I don't care that I lost my money. This needed to be seen." So there's a lot of human elements of this business.
Yeah, I would say that there's a different reason for being involved in each of the projects that I've done. I've done for different reasons. I've found them in different ways. I've had a different relationship to the show for each one, and
yeah,
Well, I guess if you come right down to it, a success like Hamilton will come under the heading in some circles as aberration.
Right.
It's not the norm. It's an aberration. So we're not
Or
in this.
it's an apparition. Did it really happen?
It's an apparition. Yeah.
Apparition. Thank you. Yes. Just a quick question, Dan Flanagan. You asked for an application. Is that for masterclass? Are you still here?
No,
Maybe
he's
you're
not.
Still here. Okay.
No, he's not.
I'm gonna assume it's for masterclass. Otherwise, he would just get it on the website.
Right. Sarah, do you have suggestions if I wanted to do some GM training? I'm not well. The GM training really is just first of all, take the classes, then you have a background for it, and then you basically see if you can get a job at a GM's office and just intern there. That's I think where most GMs come from. I don't think the stroke brings them.
You could also, I mean, if you want to work in company management, that's often a road to GMing because company managers are part of the GM service. So that's in essence working for a general manager or, nonprofit theater companies, be an assistant to the managing director or something like that. It's a different kind of accounting, but it's still learning what things cost and et cetera, et cetera.
A quick answer to Catherine Schmidt. Jane limits her class to 10 participating members. She also has 1 or 2 auditors as a possibility in her class, but it's limited to 10. She doesn't really feel that Blair's answering all the questions I'm seeing in there. But for those of you who aren't following in the chat, it is 10. She doesn't feel like she can do what she does with the class with more than that. It's just it waters down the focus that she can give to people.
Sarah T has her hand up.
And she's hunting for her unmute button.
I am. Yes, I am. So I was wondering, as a general manager, you said take the classes. Do you mean take the PDMP class?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, now I understand.
Yeah, because a general manager needs all of the information that basically they're teaching in 10 weeks. They have to have some idea of all of that. And you will also have one class in which will specifically focus on general management.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention, since we're talking about 2 different classes, there's some side benefits of the master class that we haven't mentioned. If you're in master class, actually, if you're in the PDMP program, that puts you at the top of the line for the speed dates and for any of the other programs that are like the writer musical stuff that gives you a leg up. If you're in master class, you get to take the foundations class as an auditor. You're not participating in the group project at the end. But for example, if you missed the master class on marketing, you can sit on the foundations class on marketing. Or if you missed the legal class, or if the legal class is like, oh my God, you can go take it again. So that's a benefit. I also give you a private session to talk one-on-one about your project or about anything you want to talk to. I have no, you bring the agenda, which is worth almost the entire price that you pay for the class, because I am a private consultant. So there's those added features.
Blair's a little flexible in terms of the structure of his class, in terms of how many people he can handle. You're all put into teams. I think you explained that earlier. So there are ways of making the teams a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, depending on how many people are in the class. But we can handle at least twice as many Blair can handle at least twice as many in foundations as Jan can handle in masterclass. Let's see what else is in here. George Furman wants to find, how do you find a producer that might develop a passion for the piece? Uh, help wanted section. I don't know. There's no real reason. There's no. It's life. It's the universe. It's walking the path. It's actually letting people know about your work. It's submitting it to enough people so that the right person actually looks at it and says, "I love this. I really want to do this." Speed date. Speed date. You can actually find somebody at speed date who could have a passion for your piece.
I met right before this class with someone I met in speed date on Sunday. So, and in fact, Blair and I produced a show together from a playwright we met in speed date. Doesn't happen very often. In fact, in all the times I've done it, it's the first time it happened for me. But at least you get to meet people. And this gentleman said he had 6 people who asked to communicate with him out of the 11 that he met. So that's pretty good for him.
It just happens that this past speed date, the producers have all been very actively requesting follow-ups with people. It doesn't happen all the time, but it almost every one of the producers has wanted to meet with somebody. That's where passion happens. If you pitch yourself well to a producer, they can at least be passionate about the idea. Then of course they read it, and it may not be as passionate at that point, but hopefully it is.
One of the things about both of our classes, whether you're actively pitching a project or just wanting to learn, is it's the page to stage, manual, so to speak. And so, there are classes on development. There's resource lists of how you find out. It's basically immersing yourself in the world of theater and getting to know as many people as you can. And this is just one of the many, many steps that we all take to try to get to meet as many people as we can, because one of those people, you don't need 1,000 people to produce your play. You need to meet, the 1 or 2 people who are going to drive this process with you. So, each thing that you do, whether you take a class, whether you go to a networking event, whether you come to the Friday sessions and see who's there and listen to someone and go, oh, that's someone interesting. And, oh, can we meet? Or whether you hire somebody to tutor you about things, or whatever it is that you do, each one of these steps is just one of many things that we all do all the time when it's our job to make things happen.
You know what? I'm going to do a wind up for YouTube, and then we can actually continue to meet people if they want. So I'm going to replace the spotlight with me, and I'm going to thank everybody out there. I want to thank Jane and Blair for being with us today and talking about the production. You guys who actually stumbled upon us on YouTube and have been watching this, you got a lot more than just an introduction to PDMP. You got an entire course in producing tonight. So I hope you appreciate that, and I hope you find it useful. If you're interested in being invited to our weekly PDMP, our weekly community gatherings, email me. I can tell you next week, Teresa Eyring, who used to be the executive director of Theater Communications Group, she's going to be on, and she's going to be talking about creating global collaborations. And in particular, she's coming back from a festival in Chile. So that should be of interest to some people. And then the week after, we actually have Josefina Lopez, who is the writer of Real Women Have Curves. And we're going to talk about how her play became, how her movie became a play, and in general, what's going on with her as a Latina woman in a pretty white business. I think we're still a pretty white business. And I get the costume designer in 3 weeks. Broadway costume designer is going to be interviewed. So if this is of interest to you, email me at trunltd@aol.com, and you can ask me just to put you on the list. If you want to know more about TRU, go to truonline.org, truonline.org. And if you want to support us so that we can keep doing what we're doing, if you're inclined to give a donation, go to True Donate, trudonate.com, trudonate.com. That's it. I hope to see some of you out there. I hope you'll find us again. I kind of have bragging rights right now. We actually 6 or 7 weeks ago we had an interview. One of these community gatherings went viral. We had 311,000 views. So it can happen. So maybe you guys will come watch us some more, and maybe we'll see you next week and meet you in the room. That's it. Thank you all.